Red Army of the Soviet Union on the Eastern Front was the most important and courageous, successful and determined army during World War II because of their heroic triumphs at Berlin and Stalingrad and other cities, but also because of the terrible tragedies suffered, such as the most people killed and poor and unorganized government leadership at first.
Without the aid of the Soviet Union's Red Army, the Americans and other allies would have lost the war and allowed fascism to govern the world.
During World War I, the Russian Empire was led by Tsar Nicholas II and was involved as a major Allied power along with King George V of Great Britain. Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany and Franz Joseph of Austria-Hungary were the main opponents.
World War I began in 1914 after the assassination of the Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Serbia. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia 2 months later. The rest of the participants joined all within a month.
During World War I, the Russian Empire had the biggest army with over 12 million troops. Those troops, however, were poorly equipped and weren't prepared for the combat ahead. They had to overcome many obstacles like harsh weather.
The German Empire at the time rose to become a very powerful empire, with over 11 million troops and dominant allies such as Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire.
The German and Austrian troops were experts in trench and foot warfare, allowing them to take advantage of their environments. The allies included the empires of Russia and Britain, as well as France. Italy and the United States joined later.
Adolf Hitler was inaugurated as Chancellor of Germany on January 30, 1933, marking the end of the German democracy and the beginning of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or better known as the Nazi Party.
German nationalism started to rise after World War I, with Hitler using all sorts of propaganda to promote his socialist ideals. Before the Soviet Union was formed, the Bolshevik Party, led by Vladimir Lenin, rose against the Romanov dynasty and took control and assumed a position of power after the October Revolution in 1917, close to the end of World War I. Before the entrance of the Red Army into the Second World War, the Soviet Union was formed on 30th of December 1922, which included Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, along with 5 Central Asian countries, the Baltic states, the Caucasus, and Moldavia.
The control of the country went into the hands of Joseph Stalin, who became General Secretary of the Soviet Communist Party in 1922. Following the death of Vladimir Lenin in 1924, he succeeded as the next leader over Leon Trotsky. Stalin demanded that the production rates were much higher because the signs of a second war were imminent.
However, the Soviet troops were getting ready for the attack on Poland.
On the 1st of September 1939, Poland was attacked by Nazi Germany under the leadership of Adolf Hitler and with the help of the Soviet Union, which joined on the 17th of September, as according to the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact on Non-Aggression. This initiated the Great Patriotic War in the role of the Red Army. The Polish forces were not ready to repel the attack and were quickly defeated under the powers of Germany and the Soviet Union.
By the 1st of October, Germany and the Soviet Union had completely overrun Poland. The attack left Poland in ruins. After the attack on Poland, the Western Front, including Britain, led by Winston Churchill, and France, led by Charles de Gaulle, declared war on Germany in 1939. The Blitz, or bombings, of the United Kingdom done by the Germans started in September of 1940 and continued until the main objective of destroying the Royal Air Force was completed. The German Luftwaffe killed over 43,000 people and destroyed more than 1 million buildings, but it did not reach the final objective.
At the same time, the Soviet Union was involved in fighting the Winter War with Finland, led by Carl Gustaf Emil of Mannerheim, starting on the 30th of November, 1939.
The war is the beginning of the Eastern Front, which was secretly used by Hitler to infiltrate Russia and take the great capital, Moscow.
During the Winter War, the Mannerheim Line witnessed some of the bloodiest battles.
The Red Army lost over 128,000 troops, which aided Hitler in his planning for Operation Barbarossa. The war went on for 4 more months, and on March 12, 1940, Finland was forced to surrender areas of Karelia and Sala assigned by the Moscow Peace Treaty. The 22nd of June, 1941, disregarding the Non-Aggression Pact, the Soviet Union was violently attacked by German troops along with Italian-Romanian forces at 4:15 a.m., beginning Operation Barbarossa and the whole theater of war known as the Eastern Front. Joseph Stalin knew about the exact date of the upcoming attack from his spy in Japan, Richard Sorge, but chose to ignore the given fact and wait. The attack surprised the people and the soldiers of the Soviet Union and caused major damage to the unsuspecting giant, allowing the Germans to quickly take over several areas. Hitler believed Slavs were weak and saw the attack on Soviets as a tactical, strategic, and a sacred duty. The Soviet Union had to quickly recuperate from their loss and started to send more troops out to the borders to fight. On December 7, 1941, the Japanese, led by Hideki Tojo, attacked the American Pearl Harbor in hopes of destroying the U.S. Pacific Fleet. The attack was surprisingly launched and marked the entrance of the United States into World War II. The exact launch date of the Pearl Harbor attacks, among others, have been informed to the Soviet Red Army by the spy Richard Sorge. Under a Japanese network, Sorge helped pinpoint certain attack dates by the Germans and the Japanese. The attack left over 2,000 people dead and major damage to the islands of Hawaii, but the United States gathered its strength and joined the fight for freedom. The Battle of Stalingrad, or Operation Blue, began on the 21st of August 1942 and continued into the winter. This battle became known as one of the most bloodiest battles in history. Upon attacking Stalingrad, the Germans thought the operation would take a quick week, but the attack quickly turned into a heavy resistance. The weather had changed at the end of the fall, and the German soldiers were not ready to experience the harsh Russian climate. When the planned operation went awry, the German soldiers were left with only minimal resources. As von Griffenberg, chief of staff of the 12th Army, said, shortage of roads restrict movement, rivers would often overflow and cause widespread flooding. Disadvantage would become more worse because of marshy, heavily forested regions. The Soviet T-34 tanks and Katyusha rocket launchers easily overtook German panzer armies. The United States became allies with the Soviet Union and helped them economically by land-leasing planes and other equipment. Hitler believed Slavic populations should not be able to live and that they should let Germans have their wide living space, Lebensraum, something that Russians didn't deserve. This only motivated the Soviet people to fight even harder and stronger. The defeat at Stalingrad was also contributed by many partisans and civilian groups who wanted Germans out and their country freed. The Battle of Stalingrad ended with a glorious Soviet defeat when the last Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus disobeyed Hitler and surrendered. The reason for the victory at Stalingrad was because of the tough control by Joseph Stalin, who said the generals had to stay, defend, and fight no matter what. Thousands of troops stayed in their positions and fought to the death. The city was left in ruins, but it came back under Soviet forces, and the southern part of the country had been freed. On February 4, 1945, Joseph Stalin met with the other two strong powers, Winston Churchill of Great Britain and Franklin D. Roosevelt of the United States, in the small town of Yalta on the Crimean Peninsula. For Stalin, this conference was to agree on a Soviet atmosphere in Eastern Europe. All the leaders had congratulated Stalin and agreed on the success of the Red Army, who were at the time had reached the outskirts of Berlin. The conference had ended with decisions of how Germany would be demilitarized and how Berlin would be divided up by each power. Joseph Stalin cared about his citizens and wrote encouraging letters to the army and the people, such as, "Fight for the motherland, fight for the freedom, glory to our Red Army, glory to our Navy, glory to our men and women guerrillas." A year before the conference, Operation Overlord, or D-Day, happened in Normandy, France, where the Western Front helped take the pressure and attention off the Eastern Front and allowed the Red Army to pursue Berlin. By April 1945, the Red Army had entered Berlin, the center and capital of Nazi Germany. The Soviet troops were so close to Hitler that he realized he had no escape and decided to take his own life and his wife's life, Eva Braun, with suicide. The Soviet troops were fighting with the last ammunition and equipment, as well as their last strength and health. They lost over 81,000 troops in this single operation. The city finally surrendered on May 2, 1945, because Germany ran out of men and material. On May 8, 1945, Victory in Europe Day had been officially pronounced, and the Red Army had put an end to the Third Reich. The surrender documents were signed by the only head of state, Karl Donitz. Generals Zhukov and Rokossovsky received medals of Hero of the Soviet Union, which was the highest honorary title in the Soviet Union. Insignias like this one help us remember that the Soviet Union's Red Army and the Eastern Front were the true heroes who put an end to fascism, losing over 20 million people for the freedom of the world. In conclusion, the Red Army of the Soviet Union on the Eastern Front, defending their home cities from the invaders, were the most heroic and bold soldiers during World War II. Because of their strong determination and powerful courage, the Red Army was the reason why an end to fascism and Nazism was put. They were the true heroes of the Great Patriotic War.